Searching for answers.
Here are today's top stories.
It's been over 24 hours.
And the local news.
What we see are a lot of things that are going on the earth.
This is Art of Heaven News Talk.
Broadcasting live from WHPC Studios in Garden City, New York. This is Art of Heaven News Talk, where we deliver global, national, and local news through the lens of faith. I'm your host, JONNY Brumit, and joining me today are my co-hosts, pastor and theologian Nathan Gasaway and Mark Russak of the Russak Outlook YouTube channel and podcast. If you want to join the conversation, lines are open at 516-572-7440. It's 516-572-7440. Call us up. So I got the big dogs in the house today.
Ruff, ruff, ruff.
The big dogs of WHPC, Nathan and Mark. What's going on?
How you guys doing?
All right, so I want to start off first. This tropical storm Debby has been ripping its way up the East Coast, starting as a hurricane in Florida, it looks like, and now it's spawning tornadoes in North Carolina, and it's been a little crazy, like to think of just a massive storm that big ripping through the whole East Coast of the United States.
I mean, where we sit now, we're seeing, 40, 50 mile an hour winds. We're waiting for more to come up to New York.
The fact is that it's kind of crazy that the wildfires, they ended a year ago, too. It's been a year since the wildfires.
You're talking about the wildfires in Maui.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a year, but what's really a little perplexing to me anyway is how is it a year later and we still haven't come to a definitive conclusion as to what caused them. And there's, a lot of mystery behind it. And, people in Hawaii, they've lost their livelihoods, their homes, their businesses, and they still don't know or understand why.
Yeah, the reason I just threw the wildfires in there is because there's just so much going on in the world that's kind of crazy.
But also, it's important that we not forget these people. Yeah. And in all seriousness, these are Americans. They're, we kind of out of sight, out of mind because it's in Hawaii. But this was very, very perplexing coming out of nowhere. And, there's a lot of different thoughts, and some people will throw out the word conspiracy theories. But, I'll give you one instance. Some suggest because we have identified Chinese satellites that were over the area at that time, could they maybe have imposed some laser-type mechanism to spark this? I don't know. I don't say it, but, it's just pretty silly that we don't know what that answer is.
Yeah, well, the cause of this is still undetermined. I mean, they're still under investigation, but nevertheless, 97 lives were lost. Mm-hmm. This is no small thing, even if it were one life.
Yep.
And so lots of tragedy, whether these are natural disasters or man-made. In any case, these are really storms of a metaphorical thing that we're all facing.
Yeah, it kind of just reminds me of the fragility of humans. I mean,
we are a lot more fragile than what we think. And when you see things that are like natural disasters, or whether it's an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado or a fire, how can you have peace in the midst of those kinds of things? And again, for the Christian, despite what storm is going on, we stand on the solid rock of Jesus. And really, peace is one of those things that you can have in the midst of the storm, not necessarily in the absence of the storm.
Yeah, back to Tropical Storm Debby.
Yep.
That's been ripping up. Yesterday, it went through North Carolina, both the Carolinas, and tore up, causing a couple tornadoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there was all kinds of stories from people being huddled in bathrooms, in tubs,
yep,
as they do with blankets and things. But I got a soundbite from a man that just listen to this.
Look out the back door, and I dropped down to my knees and went to pray. I said, Lord, I've worked all my life for what I got here. Please don't take it. And it went right in the backyard.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually seen a tornado in my backyard. I grew up in the Midwest, so we had a lot of tornadoes. And the fact that this man calls out on the name of the Lord to help him, these kinds of crises will move us toward prayer. And I actually camcorded a tornado that tore the roof off of our barn growing up. And these things are very dangerous. A lot of them have been spawned, and who do we turn to? It reminds me of the disciples and Jesus in a boat in the Sea of Galilee, and it says that Jesus gets up and he rebukes the storm. He says, King James, I think, says, "Peace, be still." But actually, you get an account where in the Greek it says he strangled the storm. There's someone who has authority over everything, all of nature, all of the crises in our lives that we face. And we turn to Jesus, and he can speak, "Peace, be still," to the storms in our life, whether they're literal storms or metaphorical storms, whatever we're going through, whether it's emotional, spiritual, physical, natural, supernatural, he's got the answer.
Yeah, I love that story. I mean, he was sleeping in the boat when the storm hit, right? Is that the one?
Yeah, and I've actually been on the Sea of Galilee. It's a big lake, and storms can whip up really, really quickly. And if you're out there, and especially in maybe a first century type boat, it would be really scary.
Wow. Now, this whole conversation, researching, just watching the weather, and then there's the fires going on, it really got me thinking, like, where is the safest place on Earth, right? Like, you go to Florida, you got hurricanes and alligators, right? You go to California, you got earthquakes, you got these fires breaking out in certain places. Now, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Where is the safest place on Earth? And I have found a report that said Iceland, the Global Peace Index for 2023, listed the 10 safest countries in the world, and Iceland was on the top of that.
Yeah, Iceland is a nice place. I mean, I was there. They sit on top of a bunch of volcanoes, so there's some natural disasters that you have to look out for. But the people were really lovely, friendly. It's just, if you like nature, if you love nature like I do, then Iceland's the place to be. But maybe that's the safest place in the world. Maybe I'd argue as a pastor, the safest place in the whole wide world, as the song says, is in the will of God, being in the center of his will.
Yeah, I think my point is, I don't think there's a place on this earth that there's not some danger.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, they took into effect, car wrecks and all these war conflicts and all these things and the thing. But it was kind of a fun thing to see Iceland at the top, Denmark, Ireland, New Zealand, and Austria as the top.
Yeah,
5.
but what about here in the U.S.? I go to those places on vacation, Johnny. Where would I go here to find safety?
So, funny enough, I went down this rabbit hole before I saw an article that was just published about the safest county in the United States of America. Did anybody hear this?
Let's get the drum roll.
Go ahead. Brrrrum, boom.
Nassau County, where we're standing right here.
Go figure.
Our own county, on Nassau County, Long Island, New York.
Yeah, and this ranking is based on factors such as low crime rates, strong community resources, and overall quality of life. I kind of bragged to my college buddy who lives in Memphis, Tennessee, and he's actually in one of the most dangerous counties in the world, Shelby County, especially if you're a police officer. And I say, where I live in Glen Cove, it's 1/4 the national average in crime. At least it used to be. I don't know what it is, but it's nice to know that I live in a county that's really safe. Thank God for that.
Nice. Yeah, but there was some type of shooting up there at a hotel, I remember, maybe a year or two ago. That was big news. It was actually the same month that I was getting married, and we looked at that place as a venue.
Yeah. Well, things like that can happen anywhere. But overall, when you look at everything, I'd rather be living on Long Island than, say, Memphis, Tennessee, even though I love Tennessee. I was in the eastern part for several years. I'm happy where I am right now, thank God.
Yeah. I don't mean to be a, Debbie Downer about all this, no pun intended. Tropical storm, Debby, but listen, we need peace. We need peace amidst all this, and there is a lot of conflict, a lot of storms going on across the world. We're about to hit all of them that happened this week. A whole lot of big headlines to cover this week. So keep in mind that peace Nathan's talking about. Let's start with Kamala chose her VP.
Yep.
Tim Walz. What do we know about this guy? He's the governor of Minnesota, and he's got some controversy surrounding him already, but that's kind of typical. They always try to pull something up on a candidate, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with him just really lying about certain experiences and ranks he's had. Look, he served in, I believe, for 24 years, and God bless him, and that's to be honored. But apparently, some say that he left his troops before they were to engage in war, engage in battle. So to me, the politicians are going to go and pick that apart, the pundits. I'm not going to dwell on that.
Well, yeah, and he's a Midwesterner. I grew up in the Midwest, and so one of those things that'll be important. Now, Midwesterners tend to like moderates. They're kind of like, Evanston Stevenson right down the middle. And a lot of this, the perception and the impact that it'll have will really rest on whether he's perceived as a moderate or more radical. And so each side will try to paint him one way or the other. So I would say he's a Midwestern guy. He may appeal to a lot of Midwestern people. And for a state like Minnesota, which is an important one in the election, this could be an issue. But on the other hand, if he's not as moderate as people think, or if he gets painted in another way, could not bode well for that campaign.
Yeah, and I think, bottom line is most people on both sides of the aisle were very surprised at the pick. Most had believed it was going to be Shapiro, the governor of governor of Pennsylvania, who's really, kind of tapped to be one of the up-and-coming stars. Really great leader, very well liked. I think he has a 65% approval rating in Pennsylvania. And supposedly, some say because he's Jewish, he was not chosen. That Kamala stated she was more comfortable in the one-on-ones with her pick. But also they're going to, look at what are the policies in Minnesota, and they are far left progressive policies. That's where he leans. That's where she leans. And, that will come out eventually, once you get into September and October and in the meat of the politics.
But a lot of Minnesotans like him. I mean,
yeah.
And so his, to some, he's not as far left as some would say.
Yeah. No. I mean, I thought it was weird, though.
Yeah.
It was a weird pick.
It was an odd pick, and they're going to, the conservatives and people in the middle are going to jump on it. Things like his embracement of transgender in the bathrooms and, a lot of the social programs and embracing the border, the open border. That's a big bone of contention in this country. And he's for bringing them in, paying for health care and educational costs and things like that. So we'll see where this winds up.
Well, yeah, we'll see how it all turns out. Let's move on to the next story here. Wall Street has been on a roller coaster this week. Yeah. I mean, now I'd like to speak to two different categories right here. All right. I'd like to speak to the category that live and breathe the market and are all caught up in this with so much angst. Right. Then there's the other group that doesn't pay any attention and they don't even know a word called retirement. So how do we navigate this, Nathan?
Well, I think from my perspective, and I'm a person who does invest, if you are a fearful person or you invest out of fear, you don't belong in the market. You have to make good choices and sound companies. I think Warren Buffett has the right idea here. There's been so much fluctuation in the indices, a lot of stock market volatility, and, inflation and really potential economic slowdown has caused a lot of people to have fear. Now, Buffett's not one for fear. But he has done something that I found was interesting because many of us have thought that the market's going to correct, and that means we may see a real dip, and we're seeing hints of that. But he has sold a lot of his stock in Apple and some other things, and he owns now about $234 billion worth of Treasury bills. Now, that's more than the Federal Reserve. And, he may probably get about 5% of return on that. Now, that's typically low for him. You can make more in the market, generally speaking. But he must think something's about to happen. This is my guess. I'm speculating. If the bottom falls out, he wants some cash on hand where he can grab some things. And so I think T-bills may be a good way to hedge. It's a little bit safer form of assets. So we'll see what happens. But nevertheless, there's a lot of shockwaves moving through the market.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that Buffett did, though.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah. Pulls it out right before it drops, sticks it in something, getting 5%, and then, when it's at the bottom, he throws it back in, probably, we're assuming. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, there's also a big story. Now, just thinking about this next story is frightening to me. It's kind of just sad to me. We still have astronauts stuck in space, and it looks like they're not coming home for a while, possibly till next year, February, May. I don't know the reports exactly.
We've heard a couple of reports, but as late as May right now.
Yeah, that's sad. I mean, what are you to do?
I mean, if you're stuck in a capsule, I mean, this is not like a palatial estate, you know. You're up there in NASA's Starliner. Now, this was developed by Boeing space. It's a Boeing spacecraft, according to my understanding, and there have been all these technical problems. Well, you're out there in the middle of nowhere, almost literally, right? And here you are trapped. And actually, if you were exposed to outer space, you'd be dead in an instant, and no one could hear you scream. Sound doesn't travel in a vacuum. So this is immensely terrifying. Yeah, I would hate to be in this situation. I'm praying for them. I hope that they are able to return. Lots of money has been put that way. We'll see what happens, but we're just praying for a safe return, because it takes a lot of courage to go up there, and you don't want to be abandoned. But
also, if you go back to what you were originally talking about at the beginning, and I don't know their backgrounds, but it would be wonderful if they were Christians, because in the midst of this anxiety that could be coming on them, if they had the peace of God, which passes all understanding, not that it's going to make it right, but it'll make it easier for them to accept. And obviously, they've been trained knowing that this is a possibility.
So, are they technically closer to the heavens?
Well, it depends on if you look at the heavens in terms of just spatial distance and natural topography. But it's a good question. I suspect you're closer to heaven when you're closer to Jesus.
Now,
Amen.
Yeah, but how are they going to survive for 6 months? I mean, they got the food for that. I mean, there's so many different.
Yeah, they can.
More than dried ice cream.
I don't know about that, but when I was a kid growing up, it was Tang. That was what they fed the astronauts.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
We loved that stuff. Stir it up with some water. But the thing is the emotional issue. I mean, God forbid anything happened to them physically, but to keep up emotionally and mentally under these kinds of pressure, the psychological pressure, I think that's going to be a significant battle. But
enormous. Yeah.
Well, listen, sometimes I feel alone in this world, but man, I would not. Putting myself in their shoes, wow. You know what I mean? Listen, this is a troubled world we live in, okay? And I'm looking at another story about an ISIS-inspired attack that was planned on a Taylor Swift concert, right? If you want to join the conversation, this is Art Heaven News Talk, where we grapple with these tough stories. You can call us up, 516-572-7440. Now, the sad part about this story, about this ISIS-inspired plot, was that it looks like it was done by a 17 and a 15-year-old.
Yeah, well, I think they were aiming for maximal impact. I mean, you talk about publicity. If something actually took place and people were harmed, this would draw a lot of attention to that. But God help us that people want to do this.
God help us is right.
And let's congratulate the law enforcement and the intelligence agencies in Europe that they caught it in time.
Yeah, definitely. So it's hard to look at this and not say, all this religious wars is the problem. I've heard people say that.
Yeah.
Let's turn right to what is happening in the Middle East. Mark, can you share with us?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the Middle East, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because really, what's happening in Israel and in the Middle East in that area has a global impact. Let me just kind of paint a little bit of a picture of the last couple of weeks. But before that, we need to start by knowing what really kicked things in gear was the October 7th massacre of the Jewish people there, and everybody knows about it. I'm not going to expand upon that. But not only does that precipitate going into the war in Gaza, simultaneously, because you have Hezbollah in the north, they were also attacking. Since October, you have 70 to 80,000 Jewish families have been relocated away from the north. So they've been out of their homes too. Now, you take that all into account. Just recently, Netanyahu addressed Congress on July 17th. He's facing adversity in the Biden-Harris administration. Secretly, I'm sure he's pulling for Trump-Vance. Most Israelis would prefer, because they would get more favor there. The Biden administration actually tried to remove him with Benny Gantz. They were working behind the scenes there. So there's a lot of tensions right now with America and Israel. So that was on the 17th. On the 19th, the Houthis sent a drone attack into Tel Aviv, killing one on the 19th. Then Israel strikes back, goes into Yemen on the 20th, and takes out numerous military targets. What's interesting there is they were able to travel without refueling, and two years ago, they would not have been able to make that distance. So now you're sending a message, hey, we can go in your yard and we can take you out and we know where you are. So then that follows with Hezbollah hits the soccer field in the Golan Heights, killing 12 Jewish children. Yep.
That was awful.
So that sets off Israel completely. So on the 30th, they take out the Hezbollah commander that orchestrated the bombing in the Golan Heights. The next day, on the 31st, it's almost like a spy thriller. They take out Ismail Haniyeh, who was the leader of Hamas in Tehran. He was the one who orchestrated the October 7th, and they detonated a pre-planted bomb knowing that he was going to be in for the presidential inauguration in Iran.
Now that story is wild, Mark.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, the planning.
Well, and this just goes to the Israeli intelligence. It's so sophisticated. I think they're the best in the world, because they are basically at the same time sending a message. We know where you are, when you're going to be there, and we can reach you. So then you have Iran now threatening retaliation. You can go back to April, I think it was April 1st, Israel struck 2 Iranian generals in Syria. Then the 14th is when everybody remembers the 300 missiles and drones coming into Israel.
Yeah. Wow.
Intercepted 99% of them. Most scientists in Israel attribute this to be nothing but the hand of God, that their technology couldn't have handled it without it. And then and Israel responds on the 19th saying, planting certain bombs in Iran near their nuclear facilities, as well as an air base. So they've sent messages now to the Houthis in Yemen, to the Iranians, to the Hezbollah in Lebanon, in Syria. We can reach you. We can get you. So as much as the hyperbole right now is Iran's going to attack at any moment, I personally believe they're going to pull back. I think they're intimidated, and this is what I would say is a message of detente.
Yeah, I mean, before they retaliated pretty quickly with all those missiles, but this is actually coming to the United States too, because an U.S. base was hit.
You had August 5th, a U.S. base was hit in Iraq by the Iranians. 5 soldiers were injured there. At the same day, we also found out that UN UNRWA employees were directly involved in the October 7th massacre. So, and what I think people also need to understand is this is, front and foremost in our foreign policy, but this is a tinderbox. And if anything goes wrong one way or another, oil markets are impacted, travel, delivery of goods, food, throughout the world. So this is something that we need to be very much aware of.
Yeah, well, great recap, Mark. Thank you for that. It's heating up over there in the Middle East. I mean, what do we do? This is almost like a world war going on.
Well, and you look at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, what's potentially going on in the other countries supporting Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. Then you look at the Taiwan Chinese situation. This is a very volatile time where potentially you could have world escalations.
Yeah, so we need something that will transcend all those things, I think, because it can produce a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of hopelessness, and again, from the Christian perspective, we look to the author and the finisher of our faith to help us through these things.
I mean, doesn't Scripture say there's always going to be wars and rumors of wars?
Yeah, there's, until Jesus returns, there's going to be everything that can be shaken will be shaken. So I think we need to find some solid rock to stand on.
Yeah, life is quick.
Just the fact that Jesus did foretell in the Scriptures through his prophets much of what we've seen, in the last year or so, but also years prior, should give Christians comfort knowing that Jesus has a 100% accuracy in prophecy and things that have passed. And if you're not a believer, look at that, question that. How could things be written thousands of years ago be coming to pass today? And I would say it's the miraculous hand of Jesus. Look to him, ask him.
Yeah, the Bible is all it's hyped up to be. It really
And more.
is. If you can just get yourself in there and read the scripture, it is profound. It is amazing. Life-changing.
Amen.
Yeah. So, with all this going on, we still, as a world, can come together and watch the Olympics.
Yeah, if we move from the Middle East to France,
Right.
what's going on there? I mean, did you see this basketball game,
Yeah,
Johnny?
I caught the basketball game between the U.S. and Serbia yesterday at the barbershop. I was blessed to see it. I was like, and it was towards the end, and the U.S. was struggling.
Oh, 17 points in the hole. Steph Curry just pulled out a magic wand and did some things.
He's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
And what about LeBron, man? He is just awesome.
LeBron was on the rage, man. WHPC Sports Talk will probably recap some of this after this program here, Art of Heaven News Talk. But you know what? I just want to hit one last. Let's look. Is there any good in the world?
Is there any good in the world?
We are seeing some good in the world.
Okay, so there was a young girl, right, in Maryland that grew up fishing with her dad. And it paid off, okay, because this girl won an award like no other.
Yeah, Lucy Moore, right?
Master Angler of Maryland. We got to give it up to.
And there's a lot of fishing folk in Maryland, so she's got a lot of competition, and she's outshone them all.
Yeah, I mean that's just an awesome story because time spent with the young girl, like, you know, father-daughter, and to see the seeds planted in the.
Yeah, this 12-year-old girl was the first female and the first child to win this award. So congratulations to Lucy Moore on doing something that no one has ever done before.
Absolutely. So there's also something coming up in the next couple days that's pretty cool. Can you share with us?
Yeah, if you're looking to see an exciting shower, and I mean meteor shower, keep your eyes open. August 12th, there should be up to 150 meteors per hour. So we're looking for one of the most active meteor showers of the year. That is August 12th. I'm looking forward to stargazing a bit, falling stargazing.
I want to thank my co-hosts, Mark Russak and Nathan Gasaway. I'm your host, Johnny Brumit. This has been another episode of Art of Heaven News Talk in the books, and I just want to leave you with, even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. That's
Amen.
from the book of Psalms.
Love it.
Have a blessed week.
God bless everyone.
We'll catch you up next Friday's news.